Ladies and gentlemen, today is a Thursday and I want to welcome all of our viewers and patrons to International Affairs. This is being broadcasted from the Dhaka's SATV's Gulshan studio. My name is Shamsul Alam Panto and I shall be discussing how everyone feels about tomorrow's talks in Islamabad, Pakistan between US as well as Iran. Of course, there are a different set of demands from both of the sides. Both of the sides do have a 10-point plan. More on with this news. Before I do so, let me introduce all my panel. In the studio, I have Mr. Qazi Shah Muzakkar Ahmedul. He is, of course, the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Croatia to Bangladesh, as well as a renowned entrepreneur in Bangladesh society. I welcome you onto this program. Thank you for coming on a Thursday, on a very busy day and the last day of the week. Alongside, we will have Norman Floyd Barnes, who is our geopolitical correspondent from Washington, D.C. I want to begin with Norman with the latest news in the arena of geopolitics. A very good morning to you, Norman. I hope you are having a lovely morning. Not only so, I want to discuss what you think is going on between the several sides that I was previously discussing. We know there has been a very severe attack on Beirut last night or last evening. We've seen how missiles have targeted Lebanon, southern Lebanon from the Israeli side. I want to talk about this very issue and this very violation that Israel has committed. It has been seen by Iran as a pure violation of the ceasefire between US as well as Iran. I want to know how you're feeling, Norman Floyd Barnes.
Greetings and good morning. Today we wake up to another day of war. The term ceasefire has apparently different meanings depending on which part of the world you're at. We have seen since the ceasefire was announced, more attacks by Israel on Lebanon, which was one of the 10 points of the agreement, more severe attacks. And the same thing, there's been more attacks in Tehran by the U.S. and its allies. And right now, the situation is putting the world in a very precarious situation. Now the market has basically dropped in terms of trading just because these countries, the U.S., Iran, and Israel, can't appear to have patience and stop shooting and firing missiles and drones at each other. Just 24 hours from the time they announced it, we still have violence. We still have people being killed. We still have infrastructure being targeted. And the U.S. has made additional threats stating that they will destroy the infrastructure of Iran if the strait is not open. And the Iranian is stating that the strait will not be open because of the violations and because of the situation in Lebanon and because. There's always a because. There's a reason why not to stop the shooting and killing. The ceasefire appears to be more of a reduced fire instead of ceasefire agreement right now. And things appear to be very shaky as the Friday, the meeting between the U.S. will be represented by Vice President J.D. Vance and another group. But the situation is still going on. The military resources are still staged, as the president stated, in the region, ready for attack. So it will not take much for this thing to basically blow up again. So the markets are now looking at that as a potential problem. So now we're seeing the prices of oil going up again, close to $100. Here I noticed we have about an 8%, 8 points more than last week. A couple of days ago, the gas prices are going up. So that means everything else will go up. in terms of shopping and everything else. And more importantly, because of this uncertain time we are figuring out what is a ceasefire, what did that mean, how does it push things forward towards a peaceful end, while again the strait is now being basically used as a weapon again to control and influence and impact what's going on in the world. So my assessment is that we are looking for bad times coming up because of the communications. There does not appear to be a incentive for either side to stop doing what they're doing in terms of the weapons, the attacks, and the bombardment as this process is working through. So we are in for more, I believe, more problems because I don't believe both parties trust what the other parties is saying, and there's no third party intermediary there outside of Pakistan to basically ensure that these things go on. Things have been brought to the table, but the warring parties has to stop and sit back and agree to talk instead of shooting missiles. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the strait open. You can't have the missiles shooting. You can't have that and peace at the same time. It's impossible.
Right, very accurately put by Norman Floyd Barnes. Regarding the situation, I want to come back in the studio with Qazi Shah Muzakir Ahmed. You were hearing Norman. Some of these things do have a real life impact. Not only so, the Strait of Hormuz. There has been news that is circulating online that states Oman and Iran shall be benefiting from some type of toll scheme that would every ship would have to pay effectively $2 million to pass this strait. That is an exercise by Iran to show their sovereignty over this piece of geometry that belongs to the geography that belongs to them. Asking you regarding how you see this, that is the issue regarding the Strait of Hormuz. That is how US President Donald Trump justifies his attack towards these regions. And the previous negotiating team of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, they've been given the status of persona non grata. That means the Iranian side will not be talking to them in this regard. How are you seeing this? This is, we are in the 41st, if not the 42nd day of the war.
That is very interesting, the point you've raised. Firstly, since it is in close proximity of Oman and Iran, they do what I feel they might be able to justify the fact that they'll be able to charge, because there is a charge for Suez Canal, there's a charge for Panama Canal, and there's but although it's not a canal, but it is within their sovereign territory. However, this will actually change the landscape of the world, and it will change the landscape of how oil is traded, how a big chunk of oil is coming through that strait. So this will definitely have an impact on the freight, and the freight eventually it will also have an impact of the total cost of the parcels that many countries that buy from those countries that goes through the strait. So we definitely it will be a big cost to every nation, and it will be a huge impact on globally. It will be a huge impact if there's a cost to many nations that depends on it. So therefore, it doesn't. I think this is out of aggression that is coming out from them, that they want to charge and pressurize rest of the world into pressuring both countries to come to a table to talk and communicate and settle this matter. That is what I feel. Of course, if it does continue, then Iran will come up with a strategy of that sort and make sure that that is implemented and everyone is affected. Since they have such advantage, a geographic advantage, for them to do anything like this, although it might sound very silly, but anything like this is quite highly possible. Yes, both the world and Iran and everyone else, even United States, for example, here in this case, has been affected, due to this war, I think to really reach an amicable settlement, I think there has to be sacrifices made from both sides. So Iran in its side has to make some sacrifices, and the U.S. on that side has to make some sacrifices, because it's the world, and people around the world is at their livelihoods is at stake. Every countries like countries in this region, in this region and elsewhere in the world, in Africa, and the least developed countries are the most affected out of as the outcome of this war. Right. And for the sake of the world, and for the sake of the economy of the world, and sake of all these countries, even sake of the Middle East, they have some of the biggest oil producers are there, some of the biggest some of the richest and the richest countries are there, and a lot of ASEAN and South Asian countries are heavily dependent on these sort of So in order to protect, also there's a lot of European and North American investment in Middle East, right? So in order to protect all of this, in order to protect the Middle East, countries like Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi, as at the same time, in order to ensure that the Strait of Hormuz is not affected, for the sake of the global trade and for the sake of the oil and gas, which in return affects everyone. I personally feel, whatever it is, the both side has to make some sacrifices, have to come to an amicable settlement. And what was very interesting is Pakistan taking the role,
Correct. They don't usually come to the front line for taking such a role, no. And they have proved otherwise this time around.
And what was interesting, initially the peace talks were initially started in Oman, and it was mediated by Oman, and now that Pakistan came into the play. And Pakistan is a nuclear power. It's one of the it's a strong military, as it is considered, and them mediating such talks. I think I don't know how well they are in terms of foreign diplomacy, in terms of coming to a place where they'll be able to draw some, get them on board, and make both parties, mediating this and helping this both party come to an agreement. I don't know how successful they will be in terms of that, because as they haven't been in the forefront for quite some time, and we don't have any real case to comment on that. But becoming a military power, and South Asian country for the first time in is mediating, it's quite interesting. And I think if they can get other countries on board with them to support them in terms of mediation, I think a good point will reach. And not only that, US and Pakistan also had strategic alliances. On top Correct. Of that, Iran and Pakistan shares borders. So this is quite an interesting thing. I do not have any case or any evidence of the past or any piece of history to support what I feel or what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But I feel I'm just waiting to see what happens. We want to see what's the outcome. Maybe give it about 2-3 days and see what happens. Today would be a very crucial day.
No, there was a moment just in a day or so we thought that entire region would be nuked to the ground or sent to the Stone Ages. These are comments Right. that Donald Trump made. So,
absolutely.
We need to understand how far these words have an impact on daily life. That was beautifully delivered. I thank you for that delivery. I want to ask Norman of the sort. Sacrifices need to be made on both sides to come to a mutual understanding, as said by Qazi Shah in the studio. I want to ask you about a security nexus that we have discussed earlier on. I will shed some light. There was a NATO-like alliance between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan not very long ago, and it was almost following the NATO doctrine: if one country is under attack and the other nations will follow through. In this point, Pakistan is seen trying to mediate the two sides, try to protect that region. It is important to understand the role of Pakistan in international geopolitics. I want to understand how you feel about the Saudi and Pakistan alliance, as we've seen for so many days. Norman.
Yes, this is another result of the current situation. It appears that the NATO alliance is being challenged by the United States. The United States want NATO, which is basically a defense coalition, to come in and support the United States and Israel offensive in that region. NATO is very reluctant and resistant to this possibility. largely because we are moving forward to a new uh, world. There's a new world order. What happened 50 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 days ago, 5 minutes ago
Lovely.
does not apply to the future. We have to understand that, yes, the U.S. opinion is that we have a military superiority over the region, the world, and whatever like that. We have tariffs, we have rules, we have sanctions. These rules, sanctions, and restrictions, conditions are pressuring the rest of the world to make alternative selections. They are now aligning themselves with different countries that has the same concept of the future as they do. Unfortunately, we are now in a situation where now Iran is controlling a small part of the world that controls a large majority of the commerce of the world. So, because of the sanctions, because of the military actions and these things, they are basically out of desperation forced to implement these type of conditions, and these conditions do not fall in line with the American dream forward, country first concept. Is a restriction. It requires a sacrifice. And unfortunately, the current administration do not believe they should sacrifice anything. They believe they are the victors. They believe they have won this conflict. And why should we concede to anything? Because we hold the keys. Unfortunately, that is not the case as we see right now. The keys they hold do not open the door that we need to go towards the future. It opened the doors to yesterday's events, past events, but not to the future. So countries are now talking and communicating with sources that can help them in their future. And in this case, it may not be to their best interest to follow the line of the United States, to create their own vision, just like the United States has, in terms of how they're going to operate and conduct business globally. So that's where we're at right now. We're looking at a transition. It's a shift. It's a shift from following the United States and the Western way of doing things towards I have to do what's best for my country, my self-interest, and the future of our my individual circumstances. So that may not coincide with what the United States may do. That is not a bad thing, but that is just how it is. The United States, they believe, is working on to their own interests, which has been stated. So the countries must take that lesson learned and do the same for them. And somehow they may cross each other and they may agree to have agreement, but as we see it right now, they do not.
Right.
Thank you.
And of course, there are aspects of your statement that I want to add on with before I go to a short break. Of course, over and now we see Israel and how it does not appreciate a ceasefire with its surrounding neighborhood. And we've seen an attack yesterday. Not only so, an Israeli drone strike had killed and taken a life of a journalist for Al Jazeera media network. His name is Mohammed Wisha. So it is an active situation. There has been numerous journalist deaths. Once again, condolences to those who have been martyred in this kind of aggression. With that being said, it's time to take a very short commercial break. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Pantho.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them,
testing nuclear missiles,
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing,
special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV screen,
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
With President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
Simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Pantho.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
Opening an open war conflict with them.
Testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing.
special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV's screen.
really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to International Affairs. Today in the studio, I'm joined with Mr. Qazi Shah Muzakir Ahmedul, as well as Norman Floyd Barnes from District of Columbia, Washington. I want to begin again with Norman. There has been numerous cases where we see the very bad mixture of instability with uncertainty. This mixture, of course, wants to tell us, and as we were discussing, how we see this war, where it will go. Several shocks have been observed, not only with travel and tourism, but it is creating new fronts in which allies don't see eye to eye. The country coming out of Europe, we look at Spain, which has somewhat changed its stances on various issues. We see that they don't want to see eye to eye and is trying to tell other European nations of the 1995 agreements it had with Israel, given the backdrop of this war. I want to ask you this question. Move away from Israel has been very popular ever since the genocide inside Gaza. Not only so, today we see this attack over Lebanon being the next milestone in which Israel be labeled as a genocidal state. I want to know how you see about it. Today, the Strait of Hormuz being closed, it is a choke point for the entire world. However, when it came to Gaza, people forgot about the Rafah crossing in which the aid supplies would have gone in. The contrast, I want to know more from Norman, how you see this as I have brought it to you.
Yes, this is a very interesting notion that you brought up. The trend appears to be that warring countries do not respect the sovereignty of countries they invading. Meaning their belief is, we know best for you, is our way or no way at all. And countries are not agreeing with this. Spain is one of the countries that is speaking out. However, the prevailing mindset is that the way Israel is doing business is not conducive to the new multipolar world. It's not conducive. It's believe it or not, they are stating that they're going to, the U.S. mentioned, and Israel is also stating that we're going to bomb them back or put them back in the Stone Ages. Well, it appears that Israel has never left the Stone Age. They basically believe in barbaric violence, destruction, killing of people, destroying things as a possible solution for the future. However, that will never prevail. History has shown that would never prevail. That way of thinking is not conducive to a future world, and the aggression can't go on forever. The Israeli military has also been depleted. They are struggling to basically provide solutions. Yes, they have a very superior military uh, solution, which I call the hammer, and the hammer is seeking nails. But unfortunately, at some point in time, you are going to self-destruct. You can't kill everybody, and the world is basically is not going to allow you to continue this thing in their region. You're creating an isolating bubble where basically where you do things, but you're not going to be supported by your neighbors. No one wants to do trade and commerce with you. So your only way of means is create war. Create commerce is to create war. There's nothing else that comes from your region that the world wants. Your reputation is questioned because it is a all Israel means or not. If we don't agree with you, you don't agree with us, we will take out your leaders, we will destroy your infrastructure, we will kill your people, we will put millions of people out in the desert field for you to try to survive. Countries are not agreeing to this. They don't want to even deal with a country, or I don't say a country, a state that is basically self first and not thinking about the region. Has nothing been stated by Israel about how they're going to enrich, empower, and enhance the Middle East. It's all about control, the colonialism that's been embedded in them about controlling the region and doing the things the Israelis way versus what the world can accept and deal with. So the best interests of the countries are not to associate with this type of regime, is a regime. And the United States has to make a decision on how they want to coexist in the world while working closely with Israel. It's an old saying, you are who you associate with. So let's hope that the United States understand that there's other ways that have to be done. Yesterday ways is not going back. There's nothing's going to go back to yesterday. So we have to look about future forward, how things going to work, and ways of creating opportunities for that to happen. So we're not going back to anything. The price of oil and gas is not going to go down for a long period of time. It will continue to rise just because that is the trend in this uncertain time about security, safety, and trust. So as long as these things happen, you will see steady increase because investors, companies, energy companies are very insecure about the safety of their products. Insurance company will not issue insurance for them, and the cost of doing business goes up, and that cost will be transferred over to the consumer. So things are happening, and we have to look at a new way of doing things so we can exist as a world. If not, we will be continue having these flare-ups, these wars, these conflicts, this hurting of the market, which means it hurts the people. And at some point in time, the people are going to say, we had enough, and your games are no longer going to be accepted, and you have to go. Thank you.
All right, very beautiful statements coming from Norman regarding the instability in the Middle East, the trust, and of course, as well as the mistrust among the nations that have been escalating in this war. Of course, UAE is coming out to say over 2,600 ballistic missiles had been thrown from Iran to UAE. It is trying to seek for compensations. That would be the second coming from UAE. Iran initially wanted compensations for war damages as well. Not only so, the attack on southern Lebanon as well, the capital of Lebanon. Widespread condemnation is following, not only from Iran, it is also following from the likes of France as well as UK. Both nations are saying they are deeply troubled as it might jeopardize the negotiations that are taking place tomorrow. Not only so, there have been huge losses in the aviation and tourism industry, which has a very important significance to global economy. I want to give some figures before I can ask this question into the studio. Of course, almost over 4,000 plus flights daily were cancelled at peak disruption. 5,000 flights were cancelled within the first 48 hours. Here in Bangladesh, in the last 40 days, almost 1,000 flights have been cancelled. I want to ask this question to Qazi Shah Muzakkar Ahmedul. You've seen how Norman was talking about the trust and mistrust. Anyone now thinking of traveling to the Middle East would definitely consider a change of travel plans. How are you seeing this, the economic fallout from this kind of disaster? What is your suggestion to our viewers as well?
Thank you. This is actually a very complicated and it's a simple and a complicated matter at the same time, because travel, when it comes to travel, Middle East is a gateway to Europe, it's a gateway to North America, it's a gateway to ASEAN, it's a gateway to South Asia, and also in the Orient. Yeah. So these countries like Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, they have played a very key role in facilitating travel. They have connected people from the north, from the east to west, and south to north. That's what they have done. And these airlines that we're talking about, Qatar Airways, Emirates, Air Arabia, Kuwait Airways, Gulf Air. These are some dominant players in the aviation industry. And when we look at travel, there is a need-based travel and there's a want-based travel. And due to these disruptions, what has happened that need-based travel, those who needs to go from point A to point B. I'm not talking about the ones that wants to go to Middle East, but wants to go to Europe and North America. They're going for alternative routes. And when flights are disrupted, those key big airlines who have hundreds and thousands of flights, if their flights and if their operation is disrupted, what happens? The pressure automatically goes on to airlines, other airlines.
Other routes would include Japan as well as
other route
going over the
Pacific. For example, from Dhaka, it would be Ethiopia, Malaysia, Singapore. If anyone wants to go to Europe, or North America, they would definitely take that route. And so what happens? This when there is a surge of demand of this sort, what happens is automatically pushes up the fares, because airlines, they use a dynamic pricing system, and as the aircraft fills up and the prices goes up. What happens? This affects the one travel. So those who wants to travel, whether there's someone who wants to travel from Europe to ASEAN or ASEAN to South Asia or Europe or North America, the fares they could have got on a normal time, they're not the fares they're getting. On top of that, because of the demand, right? On top of that, the fuel prices are affecting the prices as well, the costs for the airlines as well. So combined, what has done, I think if it continues, it will bring the world to a choke point where countries that dependent on tourism will be heavily affected. It's not only Middle East. Yes, a big chunk of Middle Eastern revenue, these Middle Eastern countries, their big chunk of revenue, a big chunk of, your economy is dependent on tourism. They will be definitely affected. And that effect will not only affect Middle Eastern tourists going into Middle East will not only affect Middle East, but it will also affecting countries like countries in South Asia, ASEAN, and also countries in Europe and North America, because they have investments in tourism and hospitalities that has to be protected. On top of that, all the name brands and chains you call about European and North American, they're all there, right? They will be heavily affected. Their revenue will be affected. On top of that, countries who supply migrant workers to these Middle Eastern countries will be heavily affected, because these economies
can be easily predicted that a predicament may be arising out of this.
These economies are moving from a pure oil-based economies to a service-oriented, tourism-oriented economies, right? and what happens there, they're trying to enhance that, and and due to the lack of labor force in these countries, it's countries like Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and several other countries in the ASEAN, even Thailand nowadays, that we are the ones that are supplying these migrant workers. I mean, these migrant workers are going to these countries. So what happens, and our economies are also heavily dependent on these remittance inflows that comes from the Middle East. So this has a ripple effect. It not only affects one industry, it affects multiple industry.
Right.
Like the need-based travel, because of the need-based travel, the one-based travels are being choked. On top of that, the fuel prices are affecting the prices, and consumer confidence also going down at the same time. Consumers like, okay, should I, whatever disposable income I have, should I save it for my need in the future, or should I, because since the oil prices are disrupted,
this is exactly
and
where
the commodity
uncertainty
prices
comes
will
in.
go up, and oil affects everything, right? So consumer confidence are going up. So and that what happens is global tourism is affected without a doubt. And the aviation industry, I think, if it continues, it will have a significant impact. And a lot of the airlines are also cutting in this part of the region, in ASEAN and in Orient. I've heard of airlines that are cutting flights by 35%, 25%, because they're uncertain about the fuel availability. So overall, I think it's not only the aviation and tourism industry itself, but it's the global economy is going to a choke point where many countries might be forced into recessions if this continues any further. So that is what is our fear at the moment.
Correct. Very beautifully said by Qazi Shah Muzakkir Ahmedul. I understand that the need for travel, the need for an expanding economy is what every nation is striving to attain. However, given these circumstances, uncertainty has prevailed. With that being said, it's time for another short commercial break. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Pantho.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them,
testing nuclear missiles,
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing,
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV's screen.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
With President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Pantho.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them,
testing nuclear missiles,
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing,
Special and
Welcoming all our viewers back into the last parts of International Affairs. During the break, we had lost Norman Floyd Barnes' connection, so I must thank him for his contributions today onto the program. But coming back to the discussion with Qazi Shah Muzakkir Ahmedul, there has been a very important points that he has raised about Bangladesh and about how the crisis will affect Bangladesh. One of those plateaus is, of course, the lack of finding oil. That is, we are following various procedures such as rationing as well as trying to cut off unnecessary traveling to any parts of Bangladesh. That is one method. Another plateau would be the remittance inflows from the Middle East during such a war. As businesses close down in various parts of the Middle East, it is scary to understand how the remittances will flow into Bangladesh if there are any kind of business activity and growth. So that is the exact point I want to ask Qazi Shah Muzakkar Ahmedul. What is your observations regarding this remittance issue as well? We have a huge population living in the GCC nations.
Right. Actually, I think it's quite significant because we have about 6.7 million diaspora living in the Middle East. Of that, 2.5 million is in Saudi Arabia, and rest are in other parts of the Middle East, such as UAE, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. And when we look at the statistics, almost 13.5 billion comes from. We have received about $32 billion in remittance inflow. We had remittances for $32 billion. Of that, 13.5 billion almost goes to, a big chunk, 35 to 40% of that has come from Middle East.
Right.
Although Saudi takes the lion's share, but and that hasn't been affected as much as UAE, as much as Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain. But that is a significant number. It is my assumption, although I don't have the statistics in hand, maybe 5 to 6 billion may be coming, or 4 to 5 billion, or maybe up to 6 billion is coming from those countries. And 6 billion in a time like this, due to the war, a lot of the logistic has been affected, a lot of uncertainty amongst consumer, which has affected retailers as well. And when retailers is affected, is our garment sector is affected. That means there might be a potential impact on our exports because and oil prices going up, it increases the cost of everything. So that means there is an inflation, and when there is an inflation, people have less money to spend on wants, less on wants, so they would want to spend on needs. So, what I feel there is an impact on garments is also coming. At the same time, what we can see is an impact on remittance, and that will definitely give us and put us on a lot of pressure because these are the two main foreign currency earning sources for Bangladesh. And if we are not cautious and if we don't take necessary steps now, we will have to face a bigger problem. But I think what I've heard or what I've been hearing here and there, the government has already taken necessary steps to evaluate these matters because fuel is just only one part. But due to our trade relationship and our export trade relationship with Middle East and trade relationship with North America and our exports, I think there is a bigger impact on its way. So if there is an impact, that will definitely, we have to stop our import. We have to restrict or restrain, and as well as put quotas on our imports in order to because to buy what we import, we need dollars, and for dollars we have to go for remittance and export. We go to remittance and exports, and if that is affected, that means our foreign currency is affected. And if our foreign currency is affected, then our import will be affected. And import is affected, then the local economy is impacted, because majority of the commodities that are available in the local markets or the small SME businesses that are dependent on imported items from other parts of the world. So we are in a very critical, if we do analyze that, we're in a very critical situation. So for us, really hoping and praying that this war comes to an end would highly benefit us and things normalizes. Otherwise, we have to take measures, and we have to take measures immediately in order to overcome this situation that we can foresee.
Right, very eloquently put by you. Also, I want to add on for our viewers as well. Cessation of the hostilities must come to an end. That is one point, and all the effects that is happening in Bangladesh. We are set to have the fiscal year of 26 and 27 budget coming up at the end of June. We will understand then how we will fare to the end of the year. I must thank Qazi Shah Muzakkar Ahmedul for your valuable time and insights into international affairs, talking about this global issue here on the studio. As I already have thanked Norman Floyd Barnes, I want to end on the significance of today's date, April 9th. On this very day in 2003, a US-led coalition forces took control of Baghdad, marking the effective fall of Saddam Hussein's 24-year regime and the end of major combat operations in the initial invasion phase of the Iraq War. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to seeing you all on next week's International Affairs.